Hi, my name's Siobhan and welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how to create a calendar event using Google Apps Script. To start off with, as we have with others, we're going to create a spreadsheet that we can attach to the app script. So I'm going to right click in my Google Drive folder and choose Google Sheets. Once my spreadsheet is opened, I'm going to give it a sensible name, such as create a calendar event. And I'm going to just make sure I'm ready to go. I don't need to put anything into the spreadsheet because we're just going to be working in the script editor at this point. Though you obviously can create app scripts that can read dates and times and things for an event from a spreadsheet and then work with those. So I'm going to go to extensions, app script, and then I'll have the script editor opening. And I'm going to rename my project to the same name as my spreadsheet, create a calendar event, and hit rename. I'm going to rename the code file like we've been used to. So going to the three dots, rename, and changing it to create event with a capital E. And then I'm going to give my function the same name. So I'm going to call it create and then capital E event, no spaces, got that camel case going on there. That's normal. Now I'm going to stick my cursor at the end of the line after the curly brace. I'm going to hit enter a couple of times and I'm going to save. So now I'm ready to start creating my app script. So what we're going to do is create app script that can create a Google Calendar event, which has got a title, it's got a description, a location, and some guests. So there's a number of things we need to give it. And it's a little bit trickier than creating a lot of things with app script because we have to work with dates and times, which can be a bit trickier. So it's going to be quite a few lines of code for something that sounds very simple, but at the end of it, we will have created a calendar event. So the first thing we need to do is to tell it what calendar to make the event in. So we'll need a calendar ID and then we'll need to get the calendar using it with its ID, like we've done with other things, like getting a Google Doc by its ID. So I'm going to go onto my blank line and I'm going to create a variable for my calendar ID. I'm going to write VAR space and then calendar ID. And then I'm going to do a space and an equals sign and a space and then put some quotes in which I can put my calendar ID. Now, you might be thinking at this point, what is a Google Calendar ID? How do I find that? So I'm just going to go out of the AppScript editor and show you where to find a calendar ID. Now, for most Google Calendars you'll be using, if it's the one that's attached to your Google account, it is just your email address. So it should be nice and simple. But just in case you're working with a calendar that's been made separately, or you just want to double check, the way to check is to go into Google Calendar, to find the calendar you want to create it in. So I'm going to create one for my account here. I'm going to click on the three dots next to that calendar's name and choose settings and sharing. Now I'm into the calendar settings for that calendar. And if I scroll down to the bottom, the final section says integrate calendar. And under there, it says calendar ID. And you can see for this calendar, it is just an email address. If you've created a calendar in another way, it might be harder, a more complicated looking URL, but that doesn't matter. All I need to do is go here, select, and then I'm going to do Control and C to copy, Command and C on a Mac, and then I'm going to paste into my quotes and end the line with a semicolon. So that's my calendar ID. That's the calendar I'm going to create the calendar event in. So the owner of the event. Then I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to get this calendar so I can work with it. As with other things in AppScript, we have to get the calendar and store it in a variable. So I'm going to type VAR space calendar and then do space equals sign. And now we're going to use the calendar app, a new app that we've not used, to access our calendar. So I'm going to write capital C and then start writing calendar. I can see calendar app is being auto-suggested. So I can keep typing or I can just click on it. Calendar app dot get calendar. And you see get calendar by ID is what I want. Get calendar by ID. And then we've got to open some brackets, some round brackets here. And it's you can see here from the suggestion, it needs an ID, which is a string. And we've already got our calendar ID stored in the variable calendar ID. So I'm just going to write calendar ID. And then I'm going to end the line with a semicolon. And then I'm going to hit enter and enter again and hit save. So that's the first part. We've got the calendar ready to use. Now we need to create some variables that can set up the different things we need to know about our event. What's it called? What's the information about it? Where is it? Are there any guests? So we're going to create a range of variables that contain this information. So then we come to actually create the calendar event. It's all nice and simple because we just put these variables in. As we've done with other commands, setting up the variables first makes it much easier and cleaner to set up your code and also to edit it later. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a title for my event. So I'm going to write var space title space equals. And inside some quotes, because it's a string, I can name my event whatever I like. I'm going to call mine my test event. Now, when you're creating this for a test, if you're having a go, I would recommend that you give it a distinctive name. Because if you lose the calendar event, so if it doesn't go in the right place in the calendar, you might find it somewhere else. Often it's on the 1st of January 1970, which is the first date that JavaScript recognizes. So it is really useful to give it a distinctive name that if you searched calendar, you could find. So you know where that event went and delete it if you want. So I'm going to close that line with a semicolon. We've got my title ready. Now I'm going to hit enter. And the next thing I'm going to do is the description. So that's that bit of text that people write to sort of explain what the calendar event is. So I'm going to write var space, and then I'm going to call the variable description, and then do another space and an equal sign, a space. Put some quotes. And this is just a message. So I'm just going to write here, please come to this cool event. We'll stop. And then I'll end the line with a semicolon. So again, you can put whatever you want there as long as it's within quotes, so it's a string. So those are two things I might want for my calendar event. What else might I want? What about a location? So I'm going to hit enter, right, var space location, space equals sign, and then in quotes, I'm going to give it a location. So you might tell, it could be a place, it might be a meeting room. I'm going to write the big room because that's where it's going to be, the big one. Everyone will know where that is. And then I'm going to go to the end of the line and put a semicolon. What else? Well, I probably want to invite some other people to this event. So I'm going to hit enter, var space guests. And then I'm going to do space equals sign space. And I'm going to do some quotes again because it's a string. Now, there is specific formatting for guests. It needs to be with their email address, and you need to separate it with a comma. So you can do as many guests as you want, but they need to be separated by a comma. So I'm going to put 2 email addresses in. I'm going to just type out my email addresses, put a comma, and do another email address like so. And then I can end the line with a semicolon. So it's a normal string, but separated by commas for each email address you want. So I've got some guests. And finally, I'm going to show you a slightly more advanced bit as well, which is that you can add some additional options if you want. So actually description was one of these special options, and location and guests, they're actually special options that I'm putting in. So I am going to set up these options, and this is just a bonus thing that's built into the create event function that we're going to use. So instead of being able to do all the description and location separately, we put it into one single JavaScript object. This is a bit similar to what you might do when you're doing a sending an email. There's options in that too, which work very similarly. So I'm going to write var space options space equals space. And now we're going to create something called a JavaScript object, which is basically some name value pairs. So it's the name of a thing and then the value of it. And this can have things like the description, the location, the guests, and also whether or not it will send invite emails to people. So those are, you think, useful for extra things you might want to add to your calendar events. So I'm going to do some curly braces, which is how I create my JavaScript object. And then I'm going to do quotes, and I'm going to write description. So that's the first thing I'm going to put in. And then I'm going to put a colon. And then we've already got description stored in a variable called description. So all I'm going to do is write the name of that variable. It will even autofill it for me. And that's my first item. Each item in my object is going to be separated by a comma. So I'm going to do a comma, and then I'm going to do some quotes, and I'm going to write location. And then outside the quotes, I'm going to do a colon. So the name value pairs are separated by a colon. We've already, again, got a variable for location, so I'm going to write location here. I could have manually put in these description and location in quotes after the colon if I wanted, but it's a bit neater if I do them before I put them into the options. It makes it easier for me to spot later on when I'm trying to go and change the location that all these events I'm creating would be in, or I want to update the guests or something like that. Or maybe I've got a lot of guests and it would get quite messy. So I've got location, comma, then I'm going to do another set of quotes and write guests, and then I'm going to do a colon, and I'm going to write guests, and then comma. And finally, in quotes, I'm going to write send, and then capital I, no space, capital I, invites. So that's whether or not it's going to send an invitation email. And I'm going to do a colon, and then I'm going to write true. So this can be true or false, yes or no. Just what computers love. Two options. So true, we want it to send those invite emails. So that's everything I need to put in here so I can end the line with a semicolon. And that's me set up with my options. So I'm going to hit enter and enter again. And I'm going to save my code at this point as well, just to make sure it's all happy. Brilliant. So we've got most of the things an event needs. We've got a name, we've got some people coming to it, we've got a location, but we're missing the elephant in the room, to use a weird metaphor. We're missing the thing that perhaps is most important for a calendar event, and that's when it happens. And this is the bit which is a little bit trickier. Now, we're going to do one of the most simple ways of doing this. There are lots of different ways of setting up what the start date and time and the end date and time is for a calendar event. There's different formats you can use in JavaScript for dates and times. There's lots of different ways you can do this. I recommend looking online if you need to find different ways or translate between two different formats of date or time. There's lots of things you can do, but we're just going to use one simple example now so I can show you the overall process. So I am going to start by creating a start date and time and an end date and time. So what that means is one variable will have the date and the time that the event starts. And that's not normally how we think about it. Normally we'd say this is the date and it starts at this time and ends at that time. But for a calendar event, what we need is a start date and time and an end date and time. So we need to get that. So I'm going to write var space event start. And then I'm going to do an equal sign space. So what we have to do is give JavaScript a date and time in a format it understands, and then tell it to convert that into an actual JavaScript date, which sounds overly complicated, but basically when it's in text that's a date, JavaScript's going to read that, and then in a separate variable, we're going to turn it into an actual date that calendar can work with. So I'm going to put some quotes, and inside I'm going to write a very specifically formatted date and time. This is an ISO format. You can look them up online. I recommend reading about JavaScript date objects and what formats they can come in after you've watched this video if you haven't already, because it will help you understand what I'm doing. So I need to put the year first, and then a hyphen, and then I'm going to put the month, and then a hyphen, and then the day, and then that's the date sorted. And now I want to put the time. So what I have to do is separate the two with a capital T. So do a capital T immediately afterwards. And then I'm going to do the time. So maybe it starts at 10 a.m. So I'm going to do 10 and then colon 00 colon 00. So the hours are 10, minutes are 0, seconds are 0. That is my start date and time. So I can end the line with a semicolon. And then I do the same thing for the end of the event. I can't just say, oh, and it ends at 12. I need to give the same specific format for JavaScript to understand it. There are other ways of doing this. There are ways you could calculate it. There's all sorts of things you could do. But in this case, I'm just going to give it a start time and an end time. So I'm going to write var space event end space. I'm going to do an equal sign space, do some more quotes, and I'm going to do basically the same thing. So it's going to be the same date. So I'm going to write the year, then the month, then the day, then I'm going to do that capital T, and then I'm going to do 12 colon 00 colon 00. And then I'm going to end the line with a semicolon. I will mention that when you are live coding along with me, I would recommend doing a date and time that is very near the current one, so you'll easily see it in Google Calendar. You don't want to be scheduling it months in advance and then you can't find it again because you've forgotten what date you put. So put like today or tomorrow or soon so that it's easy to spot in your calendar. Okay, so I've got my event start and my event end, but as I mentioned, I need to convert these strings into an actual date that JavaScript can understand. So I'm going to hit enter again, and I'm going to write var start date time with a capital D and a capital T. You can call the variable whatever you want, but for me, this reminds me that this is a very specific thing. It is the date and time of the start of my event. I'm going to do a space equals sign space. And now we're going to use a command that isn't specific to AppScript. It's a JavaScript feature that will create a new date object. So a new thing that JavaScript understands as a date. So I'm going to write the word new, space, and then capital D, date. And you can see it's gone special colors because it knows that these are commands. And I'm going to open some round brackets. And inside, I'm going to give it the information to turn into a date, which in this case is my variable, event start. I could have directly put in this string as a string with the quotes. I could have put that in there. But again, I find it easier to separate out these parts, especially when I'm getting to grips with how to create a calendar event. I'm going to end the line with a semicolon. Then I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to do the same for the end of the event. So I'm like var space end date time space equals space. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing, new space, capital D for date. This is just how it has to be written. Just make sure you've got that space in and the capital D. And then round brackets and put in this time event end. And end the line with a semicolon. So that was the bit that's a little bit of a headache, just getting that bit right. And as I say, there's lots of different ways you can do that stage, but what you need to end up with is a JavaScript date object, one for the start of the event and another for the end of the event. So I'm going to hit enter a couple of times again and hit save. And you might be pleased to know we've only got one real line of code and then we're going to log it as well. So all we need to do is actually run the create event function now, and it should work. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to store the output of that. I'm going to get the ID of my calendar event and just log it. Because one, that proves it's made. And two, it just means that if we needed to go use AppScript to delete the event because something went wrong, we've already got the ID and we're ready. So I do think that getting that event ID when you create a new calendar event is a really good way to go. So I'm going to write var space event ID space equals sign space. So I'm going to get back an event ID at the end of this line. So to create a calendar event, I need to start with the calendar in question, which we stored up in a variable on line 4. So I'm going to write calendar dot, and you can see here's all the things I can do with a calendar. And there's all sorts of things, but one of the things I can do is create event. So if I start typing create, it will show me create event. Like so. And if I open some brackets, I can give it the things it needs. And there's different options. So you can see here, we can give it a title, a start and an end. That's the basic option. Or I can give it title, start, a date, and time to start and end, and some options as an object. And we've already made that object, so we're ready. So first thing is a title. So we've got title, comma. The second thing it wants is that start time. So I'm going to write start date time, which is then my variable it's stored in, comma. The next thing it needs is the ending. So I'm going to write end date time. Then I'm going to do a comma. And finally, it's those options. So I'm going to write options. So it's all those things we've already stored in variables elsewhere in our code. So that would actually create the event now. I could stop, save, run that, and it would create my event. But we're getting that ID. So I'm going to do dot get ID. Like so. Open and close some brackets, and to put anything inside them, that's just what you need to put on, and then end the line with a semicolon. And this is done, but we're going to be good, and we're going to do a final line, in which I hit enter, and I'm going to write logger.log, open brackets, and just write event ID, and then the line with a semicolon. So I can just check that we've got the right thing. So I'm going to hit save. There we go. And then I'm going to hit run. I will be required to authorize this as normal. Then we should see our code run. And you can see that I now have a horrible looking ID. That's what a calendar event ID looks like. It's a random string of characters at google.com. And that is my events ID. So that looks promising. It looks like it's made something. But the real thing you need to go and check is, does it exist in calendar at the date and time you told it to go to? So let's click over to calendar. I'll just go back into my calendar. And here's my test event where I put it in. If you don't see your test event, double check what date and time you said it should go for. And if you don't see it there, go look on the 1st of January 1970. You can search up here in calendar if you need to actually go and search to find that calendar event. So I could search here and search for my test event, like so, and it would show me any events. Oh, look, I've got one on the 1st of January 1970. I've obviously done one wrong. But that is how you can go and check where your event is. So you can, if you can't find it, it's probably on the 1st of January 1970. Don't worry, just go back to your code and double check what you've got. But that's how you can create a calendar event using Google Apps Script. And then you can use that code in other app scripts as you might need to. Thanks for watching.